Story 1, Mega Man 2, released in 1988, was my first day one must-have game. Story 2, Monster Hunter. I have over 3,000 hours across the franchise. Turns out I was playing it incorrectly, and I'm really not very good at it. I bought and downloaded the latest version over the weekend, and I'm enjoying it, but I'm definitely falling back into old habits. I need to work on improving my skills. Still, it's a really neat game. Story 3. As someone who enjoys playing video games, I have many favorites to mention. Here are a few franchises: Pokemon, Final Fantasy, Hack, Spyro the Dragon, Mario Kart, Super Mario, The Legend of Zelda, Super Smash Bros., The Legend of Dragoon. These are the ones I could think of off the top of my head. Story 4. Quite a few. Legend of Zelda, Ocarina of Time and Majora's Mask, Banjo-Kazooie and Banjo-Tooie, Conker's Bad Fur Day, and Super Smash Bros. Melee. Story 5. You can tell by looking at the state of the boxes in our Nintendo Entertainment System collection. Mega Man and Final Fantasy boxes, in particular, have been worn out because I played them so much. I would probably choose Final Fantasy as my overall favorite. Story 6. I'm sure if my Super Nintendo had an hour counter, I would have logged somewhere in the thousands on Super Conflict. The little engagement cutscenes were impressive. People think fancy graphics are the key to immersion, but I truly felt like a general sending my troops into battle while playing that game as a child. Story 7. I played Simpsons Hit and Run on the GameCube religiously, along with Shrek 2 by Activision. I think I was around 6 or 7 years old. If I wasn't playing on the GameCube, I was enjoying Bubsy on the Super Nintendo Entertainment System. Story 8. Childhood Super Mario Bros. 3. I was at the perfect age when this was the game. They introduced it with a movie that I was obsessed with, titled The Wizard. The Mario cartoon show was rethemed around it. I used to draw pictures of everything from it in my school notebooks. I was truly obsessed. Teen years, Final Fantasy VII. I had mostly stopped playing video games in middle school, and then this game came along with its rich, tragic story, impressive graphics for the time, and incredibly fun gameplay. I am still chasing the high of playing Final Fantasy VII for the first time. Story 9. Crash Bandicoot, Jet Moto, Red Alert 2, and Tiberian Sun. Halo, Counter-Strike, Age of Empires 2, Empire Earth, Roller Coaster Tycoon, Worms, SimCity 2000, Spyro, Bubble Bobble, A Good Times. Story 10. That Tomb Raider reboot kept me engaged during my early years of high school into college. I love games with bows and arrows, so that trilogy really resonated with me during that time. Story 11. My sister had The Sims 2 on her computer, and I used to spend entire days playing it. I loved it immensely. As I grew up, I continued to enjoy the Sims series and still play The Sims 3 and 4 almost every day. Story 12. Super Mario Bros. 3 was the first video game I ever played, and I loved it. My mom was a prodigy at it, and it sparked my love for video games in general. Watching her show me secrets and techniques I didn't know were possible made me fall in love with gaming. She was completely amazed when I showed her some modern-day speedrunning tactics, creating a rivalry between us: strongest gamer in history versus strongest gamer today. When we talk about video games we both enjoy, I wouldn't be nearly as close to gaming without the influence of that game. Story 13. Minecraft I still play here and there. I have been playing for most of my life with around 20,000 hours on multiple accounts, including Java, Bedrock, Pocket, Xbox 360, and PlayStation 4 versions. Mainly Bedrock. Story 14. Since I'm a little older now, I have a handful of titles from different periods of my life that I revisit from time to time. Super Mario 3, The Legend of Zelda, A Link to the Past, Phantasy Star 4, Super Metroid, Final Fantasy VIII, Diablo 2, Phantasy Star Online, The Elder Scrolls Morrowind, The Elder Scrolls, Oblivion, Halo 3, Gears of War 2, Batman, Arkham City. If I had to pick just one, most of the time I would probably choose A Link to the Past. Story 15. I spent a lot of time on Ocarina of Time and Fable. When the Xbox was released, and even more time on Fable 2 for the Xbox 360. Story 16, Super Mario Bros. 3 and Castlevania. Symphony of the Night have been tied as my favorite video games for decades. I cannot choose between the two, and honestly, I do not care to at this point. Story 17. I cannot tell you how many hours I played Halo 2 when I was younger. I have so many great memories. Story 18. Solitaire was the early days of personal computers. The first real video game I played extensively was Skyrim, followed by Elder Scrolls Online. I also enjoyed Minecraft, where I built many impressive creations, one of the best being the Disney Castle. Story 19. Yoshi's Island was the first game I truly played from start to finish as a child. It was also the first game that was mine and not a hand-me-down. Story 20. From all my years of not being an adult, it would be Ocarina of Time without any doubt. It is the first game that made me feel completely transported to another world. Story 21. As always, for any video game-related question on this forum, the answer is RuneScape. It is a classic, timeless game. The old-school RuneScape experience is even better. Story 22. The Armored Core series started with playing the demo of the sampler disc and then picking up Project Phantasma. It has been an addiction ever since. I would do my homework as fast as I could and then rush to my room to play on a 12-inch TV that my grandmother gave me for Christmas. Story 23. Final Fantasy IX has been my favorite game since its launch day. I can't even imagine how many thousands of hours I have spent playing it across various platforms. However, the original PlayStation remains my preferred way to enjoy it. Story 24. Ridge Racer 7. I played it nearly non-stop from the ages of 11 to 17. I sort of just stopped playing after that and got into Need for Speed, arcade flight combat games like Ace Combat and Project Wingman, and the Borderlands series. I also tried playing some of the other games in the Ridge Racer series, including Ridge Racer 5, Type 4, Rage Racer, and the PSP games. I'm 26 now, and I'm just starting to get back into Ridge Racer 7. A friend recently got it, and I was helping him get into the swing of it. I have to say, it feels so good to be back. Story 25. The old Harry Potter games were so much fun. In Chamber of Secrets, I enjoyed sneaking around the castle, using Flipendo on the prefects. The Prisoner of Azkaban game introduced switching between Harry, Ron, and Hermione, and I rode Buckbeak for hours. He seemed to dislike Ron for some reason. Story 26. Spyro was my gateway into gaming. I was obsessed with that game from the first moment I played it on my brother's PlayStation 1. However, The Sims is probably my ultimate favorite game, and to this day, it remains my ultimate comfort game 2 decades later. Story 27. First memory. Manic Miner on my dad's ZX Spectrum. As a school kid, I played Shinobi, Moonwalker, and Golden Axe at the local burger place. In my teenage years, I enjoyed Monkey Island, and it still holds a special place for me. Story 28. Harvest Moon. Back to nature. I spent an entire summer vacation trying to marry the library girl. My dad thought I was crazy for playing a farming game when we lived on a real farm, but virtual cows were much easier to manage than real ones. Story 29. I experienced Midnight Club DUB Edition's online multiplayer open world on a PlayStation 2. We would drive around in groups, do glitches together, have fights, and everything. I will never forget those moments until the phone rang and my mom needed to make a call. Story 30. I'm not much into gaming, but I spent a lot of time and money on many of the Sierra games. I never progressed beyond those. Story 31. The original Legend of Zelda was released before the internet, making it difficult to uncover secrets. I had to wait for my monthly Nintendo Power magazine to discover some hidden tips. Story 32. Favorites were Populous, Super Nintendo Entertainment System, Faxanadu, Nintendo Entertainment System, Shadowrun, Sega Genesis, The Legend of Zelda, Nintendo Entertainment System, ActRaiser, Super Nintendo Entertainment System. Story 33. Close call between A Link to the Past, Donkey Kong Country 2, and Super Mario World. They are all in my top 20, if not top 10. Story 34. Final Fantasy, the first installment, captivated me from the very first screen when my mom's friend introduced me to it. The music, plot, playability, and dialogue were all exceptional. I even walked down the aisle to the Final Fantasy I overture, performed by a string trio. My wife didn't share my passion for the game, but she agreed on the music choice. Story 35. I played IGI during childhood and Serious Sam 3 during my teenage years. To this day, I still haven't found a game that I like more than Serious Sam 3. Story 36. Paper Mario. Burnout 3. Need for Speed Underground 1 and 2. Pokemon Gold and Silver, Ruby and Sapphire. Halo 1 to 3. And many more. Story 37. Link's Awakening on the original Game Boy is still one of my top 3 favorite games. I often play the remake on the Nintendo Switch, as well as the original Game Boy version. Story 38. First, MULE. There was nothing like it. I loved it to death. Later, Ultima 3 and 4. I totally lost myself in the quest of the Avatar. Story 39. Unreal Tournament. My mom bought me the game and let me play it when I was just 10 years old. With the amount of custom modifications and maps available, along with offline multiplayer, it is probably the game I have played the most overall. Story 40. Knights of the Old Republic. I don't know how a game like that captivated me at 12 years old, but it certainly did. It influenced much of my taste in games in the years that followed. Story 41. Probably the Spyro trilogy. As I grew older, I greatly enjoyed the original God of War trilogy. Any Pokemon game on the Game Boy systems. Story 42. Broken Sword 2. I played it on a PlayStation demo disc and fell in love, not just with the game, but with an entire genre. Story 43. I'm a 36-year-old male in the United States. Childhood. The Legend of Zelda. Ocarina of Time. A massive influence on me. Teenage years. Halo. 20s. Destiny. 30s. Either Escape from Tarkov or Fortnite when it first came out, which was a blast with friends. Story 44. Super Mario Bros. 3 remains my favorite game. The level of thought and detail put into it was unprecedented at the time. Nintendo even created a 2-hour commercial for it and sold chocolate bars with game tips and tricks inside the wrappers. I didn't own the game until years after 16-bit systems became popular, so I likely played more Sonic and Street Fighter 2 at home. Story 45. The Last Story is an RPG on the original Wii. I should probably try giving it a spin soon. It has been more than a decade. Another game is likely Prince of Persia on the original Xbox. Story 46. Doom truly transformed my perception of reality. Wolfenstein was interesting and innovative, but Doom created an entirely new experience, and you could modify it. Story 47. I consider myself a GameCube enthusiast, but honestly, I was obsessed with the Sly Cooper games, especially the second one. Story 48. It's all about a group during the peak of video games, particularly consoles. I never caught the bug. Playing Space Invaders while enjoying drinks at a bar was kind of fun. Story 49. Sega Genesis era. Zombies Ate My Neighbors and really any Sonic game. Does anyone remember the Sega Channel? We had it for a little while growing up, and every time I think of it, it blows me away. Imagine a Netflix-type service for video games in the 1990s. I recently found out it potentially had the capability for online play. Nintendo 64 era. 007, Perfect Dark, Super Smash Bros., and Jet Force Gemini. PlayStation 1 and 2 era. I got really into role-playing games. I would say Final Fantasy 9 or 10 easily. I still listen to the Final Fantasy 9 soundtrack sometimes. It's been over 20 years. Final Fantasy X was the first game to make me cry. After this, things started to spread out a bit. We eventually got a personal computer, so I got into Diablo 2 and Warcraft 3. Then World of Warcraft happened, and that was quite an experience. Sorry, I'm old, and my favorites definitely changed with each era. Story 50 Pitfall, then Legend of Zelda, then Legend of Zelda, A Link to the Past. That one remains my favorite to this day. Story 51. Pong came out when I was quite grown, but I had an Atari, a Sega, an Xbox 360, and a Wii. Now I am playing cribbage on my phone. Story 52. Sonic 1 and Sonic 2, Sonic Dash, Minecraft, and Roblox. Why? Because I didn't have a laptop or a video game console, and those were the only games I could play on my phone and later my tablet. Story 53. Robot and Discs of Tron were both rare and among the first to feature three-dimensional environments. I enjoyed Robot because it was a shooter and even included a creative mode. However, I found Discs of Tron to be more entertaining, and the cabinet design provided immersive three-dimensional sound. Story 54. I enjoyed a game where you could clean windows and cheat by getting really close to the camera. You would win every time. Story 55. Metal Slug. My brother and I would save every quarter we found or received as change. When we finally had $2, we would go and play together until it ran out. We had $1 each, and all we wanted was to play co-op Metal Slug. Story 56. Halo, Combat Evolved, and the first 3 Splinter Cell games. If you want to dig further back, Pocky and Rocky and Earthworm Jim 2. Story 57. I was raised in poverty during the 1970s and 1980s, so the only games I had access to were arcade games or if I had a friend with an Atari console. Back then, my favorite arcade game was the Atari wireframe Star Wars rail shooter, which usually had a sit-down cabinet. My second favorite game was Williams Defender. I eventually became so skilled at it that the high score would max out. It was a challenging but popular game, and I found it more enjoyable than Pac-Man or Asteroids. I never had my own game console or computer until I was already an adult. In 2000, I bought a PlayStation, and the first game I played on it was the Star Wars TPM game. Story 58. I had many favorites, but one that stays with me forever is Tomb Raider. I also have a soft spot for Spyro and Gex. Story 59. Metroid Prime. The game was quite difficult for me as a child since I did not understand English at that time. Each year, I managed to uncover more of the story as I grew older. When the second and third games were released, I always made sure to complete the previous one first. Story 60. Pokemon Red and Blue. Nothing felt quite like choosing your starter and exploring the world for the first time. Story 61. Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 2 features a legendary soundtrack, and the tricks and combos kept me engaged for hours. Story 62. The Legend of Zelda. Ocarina of Time was pure magic. It felt like stepping into an adventure that never ended. Story 63. Super Mario World. I have almost every game released for the Super Nintendo, yet my favorite is the one that came in the same box as the console. Story 64. My first system was the Nintendo Entertainment System, and while my favorite games have changed over the years, I will say this. Elder Scrolls 3 Morrowind is the only game I've played that engulfed me in its world so deeply that I would pull all-nighters. I would get home from school at 4 p.m., set up, and play until after 6 a.m. the next day. I have a tough time playing it these days because the graphics didn't age very well, but I was absolutely enthralled with it as a kid. Story 65. I'm still a teenager, so I haven't fully grown, but I used to binge-watch Mortal Kombat 10 simply because the Predator looked cool. Only last year did I find out about all the Predator movies and the Alien versus Predator movies. Story 66. Disgaea. Hour of Darkness, Super Mario RPG, Diablo 2, Warcraft 3, World of Warcraft, and all Pokemon games. Honorable mentions include Untold Legends for the PlayStation Portable and Street Fighter games. Story 67. Super Mario World, The Legend of Zelda, Ocarina of Time, GoldenEye, Final Fantasy VII, Roller Coaster Tycoon. Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.